In the year 1971, Richard Nixon announces the US dollar will no longer be tied to gold, which means that you can't use US dollars to buy gold anymore. Which means what? Which means the US dollar is based on nothing. The value of the US dollar is now based primarily on people's faith in its value. So this leads to a lot of problems like inflation and oil shock. So to solve this problem, in 1973, Nixon signs an agreement with Saudi Arabia. Basically, the agreement is that from now on, Saudi Arabia, which is the world's largest oil exporter, will only take payments in US dollars. And whatever savings that Saudi Arabia has will be invested in US treasuries, okay? So this is what we call the petrodollar. And the idea here is now the value of the US dollar is tied to the value of oil, okay? You can always exchange US dollars for oil. But then Nixon did something that was extremely clever. He went to China. So for the longest time, China and the United States were at a Cold War. Americans basically isolated China. So in 1972, Nixon visited Mao Zedong. Why? The answer is very simple. Because he needed more consumers to buy US dollars. Does that make sense? He needed people to want US dollars. He needed to create a US dollar addiction. And to do this, what did America do? America gave China everything. America started to ship its factories overseas to China. America gave all its expertise and technology to China. America started to educate the Chinese elite. And what's really important is American defense companies started to give military secret technology to China. Okay? Now, I know that in the United States, people believe that China stole this technology. China didn't have to steal this technology because America gave it to China for free. Okay? Why would America do this? To create dependence on America. Because once the dependence is created, then Chinese will want US dollars. Okay? The intention has always been to create a market for US dollars in order to prop up the US currency. Okay? Does that make sense? So Saudi Arabia gave its oil to the United States, and China gave its labor, okay, its most precious commodity, to the United States in exchange for US dollars. All right, so why is this important? Let's look at the case of Japan. The year is 1985, okay? And this is something called the Plaza Accord. The Plaza Accord was between the central bankers and the finance ministries of different nations, but primarily between the United States and Japan. Japan at this point was an export powerhouse. It was the second largest economy in the world, high savings rate. People really didn't want to buy American goods, but Americans love Japanese goods, okay? So it's creating this trade imbalance. And Japan was growing and becoming an economic powerhouse. So America said to Japan, listen, you guys need to restructure your economy because your consumers aren't spending any money. This creates trade imbalance. And ultimately, this will lead to structural problems in Japan. So what we're going to do is we will revalue the Japanese currency. We will appreciate it against the US dollar. Okay? So as Japanese consumers, you're able to buy more from the United States. Now, Japanese economists thought this was a terrible idea. But because America has military bases in Japan, Japan didn't really have a choice in the matter, right? And so this created the Japanese explosion of wealth, okay? So they were able to buy Rockefeller Plaza in New York City, and this created a Fair of Japan in the United States. So to demonstrate to you how ridiculous the situation was, in the year 1990, in Kyoto, the Imperial Grounds, okay? I'm not talking about the city of Kyoto. I'm talking about the Imperial Grounds in Kyoto, okay? That land by itself was worth more than Canada as a country. You could sell the Imperial Grounds of Kyoto and go buy Canada for yourself, okay? That's how ridiculous the situation was in Japan. Because of the appreciation of the yen, cheap money flooded into the nation of Japan, and so people were speculating on real estate and the stock market, okay, which led to ultimately economic collapse in Japan. So as you can see, from the 60s up until about the 90s, Japanese growth was pretty strong. But after the Plaza Accord, you saw a steep drop, okay? The Plaza Accords, by appreciating the yen, by giving Japanese easy money, it destroyed the Japanese economy. All right? So remember this. If you want to nuke an economy in a nation, if you really want to destroy an economy in a nation, give them easy money. All right? If I want to destroy you as a person, I'm going to give you $1 million because you're going to take that $1 million and do stupid things with it, okay? Oh, okay, yeah. What does easy money mean? Easy money just means that you think it's free. You have to work for it. You don't have to earn it, okay? And the idea of easy money is central banks have the power to print money. So if you come to me, I'm a bank, I can actually just give you $1 million and you take it. That's easy money, right? Okay, that's the idea. Okay, so you don't understand this. It's a hard concept to understand, but banks have that power. They can just print money out of nothing. Okay, and this is what we call easy money. And what this leads to is disaster. Okay, so let's go over the list of how easy money destroys nations. First is that it turns manufacturers into financial speculators. The reason why is maybe you're a car company, okay, and before you're making good money, making cars and selling to the Americans. But if the economy is blowing up, the stock market is increasing, the real estate market is increasing, you're actually better off taking all your savings, your investments, and put it into the stock market, right? Because you have better returns. And as a corporation, you have to guarantee better returns for your investors, okay? It makes people lazy, selfish, and greedy. That's easy to understand, right? If someone just gave you $1 million, you would not want to work or study ever again in your life. You create too much debt too quickly, you create financial bubbles, corruption between the politicians and the financial elite, you create massive inequality, right? Because it's usually the wealthy who most benefit from this wealth generation. You will increase unemployment and bankruptcies. And the last thing, this is really important, is because all this surge in prices, you price out young people and you destroy the nation's future. You look at the birth rate in Japan, it's about 1, okay? And the reason why is Japanese young people do not see a future for themselves. Houses are too expensive, the jobs don't pay that well, okay? Any questions before I continue? Let's continue. But it's not just Japan, it's also the 1997 Asian financial crisis. Remember, this is when South Korea, Thailand, Indonesia, their currencies were under attack. And because their currencies were under attack, they became devalued. The problem with this is, before this, Thailand, Indonesia, and South Korea had access to easy money provided by central banks. And so they could afford to buy things overseas, invest things overseas. They could, but once the currency was devalued, they now went bankrupt, okay? And as a result, the International Monetary Fund was able to step in and prioritize the central banks. So that's a playbook. All right, 1989 is important because that's when the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union and communism came to an end. Now it's the Pax Americana, okay? And in the Pax Americana, the system is America would ship its manufacturing overseas. Remember, manufacturing was a source of middle-class wealth generation. Now it's shipping all its manufacturing overseas to focus on financialization. All right, so the idea is that Wall Street would take all its money, all this wealth being generated overseas, and then take it back to America and use it to invest in America, to basically engage in financial games. Okay? Does that make sense? So in other words, before America was manufacturing things like cars and washing machines. Now America is just gambling. Okay? The entire economy is based on gambling anymore, and this will lead to something called the 2008 Great Financial Crisis, where the global economy collapses basically. 2008 is the Great Financial Crisis. Why did it happen? It happened because America had become a gambling economy, and so it had to take money and invest it. The problem, though, is there's too much money flowing into America, and there's not enough good investments. So what Wall Street did was it started to invest in really bad investments. It was encouraging people with no money to go and buy like 5 houses, okay? And eventually they would have to default. And when they default, it would create a cascading effect where the entire global economy would collapse. And that's what was the 2008 Great Financial Crisis. To solve this problem, what America did was print money, okay? Look at this, guys. Up until the year 1980, America had about $1 trillion in debt. America was founded in 1776. By the year 1980, about 20 years later, it had $1 trillion in debt. Today, it has now $37 trillion in debt, okay? This is all money printing. Starting about 2008, boom, you see the steep curve going all the way up, all right? the economy in America right now is really screwed up. The reason why is the stock market is worth twice as much as the real economy. Okay? That makes no sense at all. The total value of the US economy is half of that of the stock market. Okay? So this shows you that right now America is living in a fantasy. It's a make-believe economy.